10x your service design offering with Smapply. Take 20% off any order with This Is HCD 20 off. Let's superpower you and your design team's potential. Sign up at smapply.app. Enjoy the episode from your friends at Smapply, helping support This Is HCD podcast.
Hey folks, and welcome to another episode of This Is HCD. My name is Jerry Scullion. I'm a service designer, a human-centered designer, based in Dublin City, Ireland. Play, something we all did as children, but as we grow older, it's less and less common to see, and even more so within the workplace. Play is often seen as the opposite of work. But what about if your job was to help unlock the potential and you encourage play to do that in the workplace? Well, earlier this year, Adam Lawrence and Marcus Edgar Hormess, who I've worked with for many years, mentioned to me about a new play kit that they were involved in creating with Playmobil Pro. And I bought the full Pro kit myself out of my own money. So this isn't an advert. I paid for this kit myself. But once I got it, I hit a few stumbling blocks. And I wasn't entirely sure how to weave it into my sessions or my workshops with my clients. Now, Frank, the MD of PlayMobile Pro, who I spoke to earlier in this year on the podcast, was awesome and connected me with today's guest, Juan Prego. Now, on the topic of play, I've been a big fan of Miro for many, many years. It's a tool of choice for my online workshops, and they've kindly sponsored today's episode. And the sessions and learning experience that I provide for my clients are always fun. And I put this down to the utilizing of Miro's fun features inside their tool. And I can really curate whatever experience I want to have within my canvases. Now, Miro are helping us out by sponsoring this episode, as I said. So if you want to show some love, why not check out what they've been doing by visiting miro.com/podcast. or by clicking the link in the description or show notes, depending on where you're listening or watching this episode. Now, if you are listening, did you know that you can watch this episode on our YouTube channel? People are absolutely loving the fact that they can see the guests, chat about things, so be sure to subscribe if you can get a chance and check out our YouTube channel. Back to Juan. He's produced an awesome book, Play Like a Pro, that is due out later this year in 2023 in English, and I have a copy of it. And it's awesome. It's great to hear Juan, though, in this episode talk about how he recommends weaving methods like Playmobil Pro into his sessions. Is it as simple as just cutting and pasting? No. And also cover off his thoughts regarding Playmobil Pro versus Lego Serious Play, etc. There's a debate in the community on which is best. Not much of a debate, anyway. Let's jump straight in. Juan, I'm delighted to have you on the podcast. We've been catching up and chatting a little bit more about yourself, Tim, Tom, and Tam, who we're also going to get to hear from in a few minutes as well. But maybe for our listeners, start off, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from and what you do.
Well, thank you for having me. It's great to be here. My name is Juan Prego. I'm the founder of a few companies, actually to Creativa Creativity Certification Program, the Ideas World Cup and other initiatives. Yeah. I'm also a writer and a speaker, have 5 published books, and I started my career in engineering. Then I went to advertising, and then after many years there, I got bored. Took a year to rethink what I wanted to do because I didn't want to keep selling ads of things that I didn't believe. And then some people invite me to give a leadership program because I train people I live in 3 countries, Argentina, Spain, and China. So they invite me to give a training on how can you manage a multicultural team? So how can you be a leader that manage multicultural teams? And I discovered the world of training, and I've been doing that ever since now with my own companies and my own methods and the things that I believe in.
Wow, there's a lot to unpack there. That's a compressed amount of information in a very so you've achieved an awful lot in the last whatever, 25 years, maybe professionally. But today we're going to be focusing on a little bit more around the work that you're doing with Playmobil Pro and
Yes.
Playmobil generally, I guess.
Hmm.
And when I was speaking to Frank a number of months ago on the podcast, your name came up. And I explained to Frank whenever I got the Pro kit and it arrived, it was great. And I was like, okay, now I'm starting to think about how I can weave this into my training, into my in-person training, and even sometimes online training as well. And he said, "Oh, well, there's Juan Prego. Juan Prego is working on a book called Pro Play, and I don't think it's out, but yeah, you should try and email him."
Hmm.
And here we are now. And I've got the book. I got it digitally, and I printed it out, and I reference it. It's not. I guess it's not the kind of book you read on a sunny beach in Lanzarote, but it's a book that I'm hoping to get in the physical form. So when is this book going to be coming out?
Well, the book is already in Spanish, and we hope that by the end of the year, it will be actually in Spanish. It goes by its third edition.
Okay.
Yes. And I hope that by the end of the year, we have the English version printed.
Okay. So in the book, you talk a little bit around the principles
Hmm.
of play. I'd love to talk to you a little bit more around that. So for people who bring you in to the organization and you tell them that you're going to be focusing on the principles of play, how
Hmm.
do you describe it to them?
Well, to give a little bit of history of how the book was born. The book was
Yeah.
born about from the method, which is called the Pro Play method. And when Playmobil launched the Playmobil Pro Kit in 2019, I have exactly the same thought that you had. Like,
Yeah.
well, what do you do with it? We have been experimenting with a lot of techniques for many years with different kind of toys. And we say, well, I think we can have a compilation of techniques that we can apply with Playmobil Pro because we created a creativity certification program, which is a program that certified more than 5,000 people all over the world on different techniques. And they start asking us, what can you do with this? You know, I've seen the pictures. What can we do? So we compile a set of techniques, but before we put it out there, we say, let's try them out with professionals. Let's call people from industry, coaches, design thinkers. Well, let's bring innovation managers, human resources managers, CEOs, and let's try our techniques. And the interesting thing was that when they started using the different techniques that we generated, they got really deep insights. Some of them said, well, I've been struggling with this problem for years and I solved it in 15 minutes. Some of them started crying in a 15-minute, you know, funny exercise that we created. So we started to realize that we had something more powerful than we thought in
Sure.
our homes. And that's when we started to work. Okay, this is more than just a set of techniques. This is a process, this is a method. What is going on? We unpack our own techniques and said, what is going on in this process? And why is it so powerful? And how can we amplify this? And that is where the Pro Play method was created, that has the training and the book as part of the
Okay.
materials that we have out there to help people know how to make the most of the Playmobil Pro Kit.
Okay. So when you talk about a process, maybe drill into that a little bit more.
Yes.
Let's talk about the process of how you introduce it into the workshop
Yes.
and what that process looks like.
Yeah. Well, the first thing that we need to understand is that everybody knows how to play. Nobody has to be taught how to play. You know, we all play when we were kids. The thing is that once we get older, we change the way we play. When we are kids, we play to discover, we play to connect, we play to have fun, we play to learn, we play to experiment. And as we grew older, um, we start to play just to win. We change this exploratory kind of playing to
Mm.
competitive play. And we take that into our businesses. So when we talk about play and gamification, people think about oh badges, who's going to win, it's a competition, and we forgot that during our infancy, we discover the world and we discover our relationships and those
Yeah.
around us through play. What
Yeah.
is the first thing that a kid says to a kid that they don't know? They want to play. or
Yeah.
can I play?
Yeah.
And we lose that as we go older. So when you introduce play into a session, um, you introduce it through playing. The best introduction is and it's the first step of the pro play process is let's start playing. So I'm not going to explain to you about play. Let's play and then let's unpack. So let's start playing. It's our motto and the first step of the process. And because once you start playing, you understand um, intrinsically the value that has what you just did, instead of me trying to just go over 10 slides explaining why playing is good.
So let's talk about why people stop playing. At
Mhm,
what point are you seeing that shift?
mhm.
And what ages are you seeing that? You mightn't have that information at hand,
Yeah.
but when does a child deviate from playing to experiment and playing to learn into playing to win? Do you have any information on that?
Yes, yes. This the changes, and it also goes along with some changes in the way that the brain works, but it's mostly has to do with education. So at around 7 years, when you start to think on serious stuff at school, et cetera, and you start to think about grades and your results and things like that, then your brain switches from let's play, explore, and learn to let's get to this goal, let's get to this grade, let's get to this objective. And these changes finalize for around 14 years. You are fully competitive, and then the point of no return is around 17. Then that you're only competitive. All right. So you have different stages where you play less and less. So let's say a 12-year-old still is able to put a cape and play pretend, but let's try to do that with the 70-year-old. It's way harder.
It's funny because in the research for the Makers and Doers School, when I was
Mhm.
researching with children, I identified it as around 6 years old. So I'm not too far off.
Yeah.
What seems to be an issue is children self-identify as being good at art or good at drawing or good at these things. And then they
Mhm.
ended up being much more likely to receive praise and continue to experiment and learn and draw. I'm holding a pen here in my hand for anyone listening on the
Yeah.
podcast. And one of my goals with the Makers and Doers School is to try and reiterate the importance of play, and also then not just have be the only constraint as being good at art, good at drawing, good at craft. It's much more than that. So, can I ask what happens if a child stops playing? Like, is it good that they shifted, or is
Mhm.
it bad? Do you think, or can it be answered in binary terms that they move from winning to get versus winning to play?
Well, I think that it's a natural, continuation of the exploration that will happen. In some kids, happen earlier because of scholarization and the parents and the pressure of their peers. In some kids and some types of schools, that happens later.
Yeah,
So I think it's a normal part. But what I think is that we have created a society and a type of education that focus only on that.
yeah,
So, um, and you see how much fun is, for example, if you want to learn chemistry or physics, if you learn it through experiments, that if you learn it through just memorization and a test where you achieve certain points. So experimentation is still our preferred way to learn. And if you go a little bit further and you go into the scientific realm, that's all they do. They do experiments and they play and they uncover, and sometimes they don't know exactly what is going on, and they don't have a clear goal. And some of the most remarkable scientific discoveries came from scientists with no goal, just experimenting with stuff.
hmm,
So when we start experimenting, we start learning. We stop learning. So our growth stalls,
yeah,
because we can have a lot of knowledge, but that um, doesn't mean that we have a lot of new skills or that we do new things. This time we see 300 videos and then we think we are experts at something, but then we don't have the hands-on experience to back that up
yeah,
because we haven't experimented. So when we start experimenting, we start playing, we start growing, basically.
Yeah, it's the difference between playing to learn and playing to know, really. You can learn a lot of the material, but actually the applying of the doing is where the knowing comes
Yeah.
in my experience. When you mentioned there about a child or a teenager being 14 or 17 years old and they're kind of fully formed and they haven't been playing, they've been playing to get versus playing to learn. I love that definition of playing to get because there's something happening, there's an exchange. But
Mhm.
when you introduce, say, somebody who's an adult in a workshop to
Mhm.
play, what are the barriers that they're facing, and why, if you walk out in a cape into a workshop, what
Mhm.
hap- Hey, sorry for interrupting the episode, but I wanted to tell you about today's sponsor, Miro. Many people connect it to just being another business collaboration tool, but for me, it's so much more. I use it to manage my own ikigai, to help me keep track of my own life and career. This one here that you can see won't get shared to anyone else, so it's a private board. Only I can see it. Now, the beauty of all this is I didn't need to create these canvases from scratch. People on the Miroverse upload them, and there's a constant stream of updated frameworks there for all us changemakers all around the world to use for free, many of which come with really detailed instructions on how to use them. So for more information, see www.miro.com/podcast, where you can get 3 free canvases for free for life. Let's get back into that episode.
Well, the main barrier that people have is their own ego, is the self awareness of how silly it is that they are, this old and playing. And the second fear is a social fear. What are my peers or my boss going to think about this?
Right.
And the third one is just a result driven pressure. Am I going to get something useful out of this? Are we wasting our time? Why are we doing it like this? So there's more than just one reaction to play.
Mm.
But the reason why the first mm, step of our process is start playing is because all that fades away the moment you start playing. All
Yeah.
that is in your mind and is your internal dialogue just stopping you and thinking, oh no, this is whatever. And what are these people are going to think? And then you start playing and then you start smiling and then you start uncovering things. And then you get two ideas that you haven't get before. And then you say, well, this is actually very interesting and very useful.
Absolutely.
So the in order to go through all that, if you can start playing, that's great. But sometimes, you have to convince people to start playing before they start. And mostly the people that will hire you, not the people that already you have in the room, because that's easier. You get them to start
Yeah.
playing and then works. But what about the gatekeepers, right? Who's going to say, are you going to have for example, I have board of directors of pharma companies, designing their 3-year strategy in the mountain in a resort. And I have them 2 days playing with Playmobil. So I had to do a lot of convincing before we got to that point to different
Yeah.
people that were saying like, but why per play and why with Playmobil and what are you going to do and why don't you use the traditional stuff, etc., etc.
But,
Um,
but what's happening there? Like, so 2 days of play in a Swiss mountain resort with high paid executives
mhm,
who are used to reading large bound reports.
mhm,
What's the justification? And I know that was probably an off the cuff 2 day kind of estimation,
mhm,
but I know why I think that would be valuable. But I'm keen to understand how you would actually talk about that to the gatekeepers about
mhm.
why this is going to be beneficial.
Well, it has a lot of aspects that are very, very powerful. In this particular project, for example, that we were working, one of the key concerns was that due to a lot of remote work that had been done during the last years, there was a lack of connection between the people that were on the board of directors.
Yeah.
And that led to a lack of alignment on the results, on the goals, on the way of working. So, how do you go about generating connection among people and generating alignment
Hmm.
around? people that haven't seen each other maybe for 2 years. And in the middle, you have changes in the
Yeah.
board. And then you have some people that never sit down together in a room. And then now they are going to be sit down together in a room, but the CEO of the company is going to be there, which is a very imposing figure, and you want to generate connection at the same time. So how do you go about? So you have most of these sessions don't have a single goal, like, okay, use Playmobil and generate an idea for this, but they have complex problems that they need to tackle. They need to tackle connection. They need to tackle alignment. They need to tackle actually creating a strategy and tackling all these at the same time. There are very few tools that can work at the same time with that. What you would normally do is, well, you do an activity for connection, and then you do an activity for alignment, and then you do an activity to think on the strategy, and you use wide range of different activities in order to solve these middle goals that you have. Um, but you can do all that with Pro Play and Playmobil Pro. You generate connection when people start playing. They start playing, they immediately get into a zone where the defenses are low. So they start to share more than they shared before. Some
Yeah.
people, in the last training I gave in Germany, one person said, I've been working with my colleagues for 20 years, and this is the first time that I think that I really got to know them.
Yeah.
So you go through that barrier, and then in the matter of alignment, when you have a model on top of the table, it's way easier to see where you and I align. That if we just talking and talking and talking, words are invisible, and then I said my words, and then you imagine something, and then you're imagining a hotel, and you're imagining the faces of the board members and the faces of the CEO, and that's all you're in your imagination. So right now, there is a misalignment between my image of the board because I've been there and your image. And I'm 100% sure that there is a big level of alignment, but there are some things that are way off. So this happens in any team. But once you create this model and you put it on top of the table, I can see your mental model in top of the table.
Right.
Think it as a 3D printer for your mental model. This is how I call Pro Play.
Yeah.
So
Agreed.
now I see it and I can see where we are misaligned. I can share my model, and then we can come up to a joint vision of how this is working or should work. So you are achieving already 3 goals just with one application. And then you reproduce this with, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 applications that you do in 2 days. And then you have a lot of goals that you achieve with just one technique. And and most of the sessions that we do are short ones, are not 2-day ones, are just two
Yeah.
hour ones or 4 hour ones. But when we have the luxury of working 2 days with the team, then magical things happen. And in this particular session, at the end of the first day, the CEO come and said, we already met all the goals that I had. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but this already surpassed my expectations.
Yeah. It's funny. I totally see the value when you're speaking about it, because recently, like just before I went on my holidays there 2 weeks ago, I was training a bank, and it was the bank's design team, and they were pretty close. They knew each other, but we just did a simple exercise, a 40-minute exercise, where I laid the Playmobil out on the table, and I was like, "Look, build a reflection of yourself. What's important to you?" And obviously, there's a certain amount of restriction on the props. So if people are reaching for the wizards, shining, kind of, the little figurine in the
Yes.
Playmobil kit,
Mhm.
and people are, I want that, I want that. And so, well, you can have it after he presents and so forth. But there was a lot of people there learning new things about their team that they've been working together for a couple of years. And like, I didn't know you did that. I didn't know you had that. And I was like, isn't that really, really powerful? How in 40 minutes, the externalization of their own reality allowed us to get closer to that person.
Yes.
And it kind of what's the word? It basically, it allowed them to focus on this thing that was they were holding in their hands versus talking about themselves. And
Yes.
that's the bit that I really want to learn a little bit more about.
Mhm.
Why do you think that that thinking is more powerful? What is it about us holding something in our hands that is reflective of us why is it easier for the person to talk about that thing versus themselves? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, in the course that we have, we teach 8 core principles that can be combined to design different applications. So it's not that you learn this and then you repeat it. We teach different principles that are what I call the ingredients. And then we have the recipes that are recipes that we already give you to plug and play. But the main thing that we do before that is we explain why all these things work. And then we have different theories that make this happen. In this particular point of having something in your hand, one of the things that I think is the most powerful is that you generate something that psychologists have been trying to generate and Buddhists have been trying to generate, and yoga has been trying to generate. That is, you immediately generate an observer. So you always have this in philosophy where you have the observer that is separated from the self. And when you generate that, you can observe yourself in action from a completely different perspective. Um, and so when you create a model of yourself, you are inadvertently generating an observer, a third person observer. And that is key to the pro play method working, is that third person
Yeah.
where if you're seeing a football match in the TV, you know exactly what needs to be done and who needs to be changed because you're outside the match. But when you're in the field, it's impossible to make the best decision. That's why you need somebody outside. So this is the same with our own experience. You know, we experience things in first person. So when we switch it to third person, suddenly things become very clear. I call this your mental mind mirror. When you are going to go out from your home and you want to look good for an interview or a job or a training, then you look in your mirror and you see, okay, I'm aligned, I'm pretty, I can go out. But what do you do? How do you do the same for your mental models or your thoughts or your beliefs or your values or your goals
Mm.
or your attitudes or your behaviors or your skills? Well, you can do that with a model. It's a mirror to all those internal things that you couldn't see, and it helps you improve them. And it's so powerful to see them outside you, but at the same time, know that that is inside you. So the third person claim allows you to separate the observer from the self so you can be much more objective because the level of emotion also it's lower, so the reactions that you have, the resistance that you have is lower because it's not talking about you, it's talking about this thing that is separated from you. So
Yeah.
and if you read the Buddhist philosophy or you go to psychologists, that's a lot of the work that they're trying to do is help you generate this observer.
Yeah, absolutely. The other self looking
Mhm.
inwards. Well, what do you think? Or what's your approach, should I say, when you're working in an organization or working with an organization? You present the pro kit,
Mhm.
and you have somebody in the room of influence who is resistant to
Mhm.
exposing themselves to play.
Mhm.
What are the methods that you do? And hopefully, you're not going to talk about beating them up or you know, sedating them.
No.
Well, that there are
Um,
my options. That's a joke, by the way. I would
w-
never sedate them.
I'm a very practical and result oriented person, despite what it may appear for my speech. So I let the results speak by themselves. So I don't need to convince you to play. If there are more people playing
Yeah.
in the room, you will see what they achieve. And this will help you understand the value of the method that we're using. So I don't go around convincing or forcing people to play. Um, and one of the things that I explain on my trainings is that I renegade this idea of, well, everybody should talk the same amount of time and everybody should participate in the same way and everybody should give 3 ideas and everybody should listen to everybody. And we are all different
Mm.
and we all play in different ways. And
Yeah.
when you look at kids, you have a kid that is building the sword and screaming and giving directions. And then you have another kid that is sitting in the corner and is looking. And if you say, oh, that kid is not included, etc., and you go ask that kid, say, no, no, I'm the gatekeeper. I sit here and I keep the gate. And that is my role. And that is what I want to play. I don't need to be there, screaming orders. That's not how I like to play. The same way when you generate a or play session and you're going to play with Playmobiles, it will be foolish to think that or expect that everybody will play the same way and should share the same amount of time and should talk the same amount, because everybody plays differently, but they are all adding value and contributing to the conversation. So that person that is not playing, it's also adding to the value of the session, because for the rest of the participants, they also see what happens when somebody is not playing, what happens with that person that is not joining the rest of the group. And that person starts to understand what the group dynamic is. So for me, it's not about forcing people to play or convincing people to play. It's just an invitation to achieve results using a different method. So you have been using Excels, you have been using Post-its. Well, this is a new method, new tool. Instead of the Post-its, you have the Playmobil Pros. And instead of the brainstorming, you have the Pro Play method. So you use new tools, don't use the same methods that you use, learn new ways of working, learn new methods. This is a new method.
Yeah.
So I think that actions speak louder than words. So when people is reluctant on the group, normally they end up joining because they see the value of what is happening and they end up joining the process.
So if we were to talk about different Zoom levels, so like within an organization, like flight levels, if the problem is too macular and it's too focused and it's too zoomed in, do you still feel that Pro Play and Playmobil Pro can be used? Because in my experience, if the zoom level is too low, they become too sort of restricted. I'd love to get your understanding about the framing
Yeah.
and setting up and making sure that you're approaching it at the right level.
Well, we have 3 levels in our training: level 1, 2, and 3. Level 1 is mostly for one-on-one sessions and it's for very practical issues. So level 1 can tackle a lot of in goals that are for other techniques too narrow. But with level 1, you can go to very narrow topics and then solve them and move on. On level 2, you do group dynamics. And on level 3, you do complex problems. So if you will want to use a complex problem technique, but you encounter a very narrow goal, then it will be a mismatch. And I see that happen sometimes with facilitator. They gave me this goal and I tried to do this and it didn't work. Well, because you have to understand what the scope of the goal or the problem you're trying to solve is, and you have to adjust the application that you are designing or using to the scope. So for big scope, complex problems, we have a set of principles and facilitation and design methods. And for very narrow themes, we have everything on level 1 that can tackle those problems that sometimes it's almost like making a decision. There's not much room to explore a bunch of options.
I love that. I want to ask you a question about, and it's one of the most common questions that I get when I bring the Playmobil in. They kind of go, "Oh, it's like serious play Lego," and like sort of. I know my reasons why I decided Playmobil Pro. What was your reasons with Playmobil Pro? And like in my experience, by the way, they're both awesome. Okay, we're not like picking. It's like Roger Federer and Nadal. They're both
Yeah.
awesome tennis players. Okay,
Yes.
but I want to get your understanding about why you leaned so heavily into Playmobil Pro.
Well, I love Lego and I've been using Lego many years.
Oh yeah,
But to be honest, I never used Lego Serious Play in a business setting because I felt that it didn't match my style of facilitating or the problems that I was trying to tackle.
yeah.
But I always used Lego. I just didn't use the method that was behind it. Um, I tend to do very short applications, very result oriented, where, an action plan needed at the end. And I felt that didn't fit my needs, my particular needs.
Yeah.
So when Playmobil launched the Playmobil Pro kit, which can now say proudly that we're the only official partner of Playmobil Pro around the world. Um, I saw the chance to do everything that I was missing in those other processes. Everything that I wanted to do that couldn't be done because the method didn't allow it, or it requires some certain steps, or whatever. I think that it's completely different, a completely different way of playing. And one of the things that I did before launching it is I tested with Lego Serious Play people that love Lego Serious Play, have been using it for years, etc., etc. And they'll say, well, this is different. This adds a different level of applications that we can do. This is not the same.
Yeah.
So eh, I think that there are a lot of differences in the method and in the tools. For example, in the tools, the characters are way bigger and customizable. You can write on them. So that allows a completely new range of things that you can do just playing with the characters.
Yeah.
On the other way, everything is pre-made. So instead of spending time building, an axe with different blocks, here you grab an axe. So
Yeah.
building an axe or building a hat maybe took you, 15 minutes. And then here you take it in 1 second, and then you have to build another thing. It takes you another 50 minutes, and here you grab it in a second. I'm not saying that it's not valuable to build your stuff. I'm just
Mm.
comparing, differences on the timing of the exercises.
Yeah.
And the most interesting part for me is that when you grab a hat or you grab an axe or you grab a gold, it's not that you're grabbing something where the meaning is close. The fabulous thing about Playmobil is you have 480 different elements in the professional kit.
Yeah.
And then you grab one element and I ask you, what does this element means for you? And then you give an answer. And then I ask the person next to you and gives another one. And then I ask you in a second application and it means something different. So you have 480 elements. You have all the combinations
Yeah. Yeah.
between those elements. And then you have the different meanings that you can attach to and different points. So
Yeah.
it's almost infinite and it gives you immediate, quick access to it.
Yeah.
So the focus is not on building on what you have built, it's on playing. So the focus on pro play is in interaction. So one of the things I say, if you build something and then you talk about it and then you do nothing, when do you play? Because I see what my kids do with their Lego models. They love the Lego models. They build it and they didn't want to touch it because, they spend so much time building it that they don't want to touch it. So I wanted to create a process that was opposite to that. And what I say to my students is, if you don't do something once you create the model, then you're not playing, you're just modeling.
Yeah.
So I call this interactive and I call these live models. So and this is the step 3, once we do the initial model instructions and we create a model, then we have playing instructions. And it's very ephemeral. What I want to say is, when you play, you get to an insight, and the important is not the model that you have on the table. It's not talking about what you did. It's the insight that you got from that movement that you made, from that playing that you did. So it has so many differences that we could do an entire podcast just on the differences
I'm
that
sure.
both method has.
I'm sure. Do you think we've time to, or
Mhm.
do you have time
Mhm.
to talk about some methods that you use very regularly that
Mhm.
maybe people listening could say, actually, you know what? I want to have a look about what this is, and we're going to put this one up on YouTube. It's a video-based
Uh-huh.
podcast as well. So I've got my Playmobil Pro kit here.
Mhm.
I know you've got some serious pro play stuff behind you.
Mhm.
Are you okay to talk about a method like the externalization of the self is one that
Mhm.
I use all the time, but maybe for people listening, there might be one that you can say, well, here's another one that you could use.
Yes, of course. There are so many. And one of the things that we explain when we teach pro player is
Yeah.
everything starts with the purpose.
Yeah.
So if you understand what the purpose is of that session, of that application,
Yeah.
then you can use the principles to design the following actions. So we have different applications and techniques and methods for different purposes. So it's not
Okay.
the same if you want to improve your relationships with your coworker, that if you want to design your career path, that if you want to negotiate a better salary, that if you want to improve a process in the company, that if you want to get to an innovation. So everything that you're going to do is based first on understanding what the purpose is,
Purposes.
because we don't have one application fits all. Whatever is your purpose, then you do this. No, if this is your purpose, then we have a set of things. If this is your purpose, then we have a different set of things, etc., etc. So the first thing is what is the
Yeah.
purpose?
So I guess if we were to introduce people to Playmobil Pro,
Yeah.
and you're entering a workshop and you were introducing them to play, and you said, okay, we want to start introducing you to play. So we'll have to have
Mhm.
some restrictions around what their goals is.
Yes.
It could be about learning about
Mhm.
your peer.
Yeah.
So is do you have a method that might be suitable for that?
Well, it's the basic introduction technique that we use that is a great, if you have the kit, and you probably have done some version of this at the beginning of your training, is you get into the training and you ask people to personalize a character. We call them characters. We create an entire language on how to call things
Yeah.
so we can understand each other, because many people call these different things. And then how can we understand each other if we all use different words for the
Terms.
same things, right? So we create an entire vocabulary of how to refer. So we call these characters. So it's a figure when it's in the box, and then when you take it out, it's a character because it has a personality, it's a personalization, it represents someone, right? So you pick up a character and then you personalize it. And then, for example, an exercise that I love to do when I start a training is you pick 3 elements that are very significant for you, or that represent very significant things for you in your personal life. Then you pick another 3 elements that represent very important things for you in your
Okay.
professional life. And then I love to add a 7th element that represents your purpose in this training.
Okay.
And it's very interesting the process that goes by when you grab an element and you know what it represents for you. We say, this is personal or professional? Is there a boundary with this? Or do I just have
Yeah.
this? So a lot of deep thought arrives from a very simple exercise. Just pick 3 items. And
Yeah.
then when you start talking about the item, let's say I grab this flame, right? So I grab this flame because I believe a very important thing for my work is passion. Because I believe if you are not passionate about what you're doing, then why are you doing it at all? So compare that with an introduction where just, Juan, please introduce yourself. Well, I'm a trainer of blah, 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 and I come from engineering and blah, 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 and advertising, and you know nothing about me. You just know my CV. And then you ask me to pick an element, and suddenly I'm talking about how passion is so important in my life, something I would have talked if not for this element. So you cut through the cognitive barriers that your consciousness have, and
Yeah.
you go into a connection in directly to the unconscious content that is
Yeah.
normally blocked.
We could definitely speak for hours on an awful lot of these things. So hopefully the book will be out later on this year, as we're
Yes.
saying. Um, if people want to get in touch with you, well, what's the best way for people to connect with you, Juan?
Yes.
You're on.
So, of course, I have LinkedIn and other networks. I've been putting lately some YouTube videos as well, as per request for my community since the pandemic. Um, the first place to know to ProPlay method is proplaymethod.com. There you have more info and videos and resources. Also they can visit the creativity certification program to see what we do at future dates, etc., etc. And the ProPlay method book in English, there is a draft version, is downloadable in digital, but I recommend to wait for the printed version. I think
Yeah.
I have printed versions here, and it's just such a different experience. It's a
Yeah.
much Yeah, it's a book meant to be read. I printed, and we put so much effort on even choosing the kind of paper that it changes the experience. And so it'll link it in Instagram, Twitter, whatever. They look for Juan Prego, they will find me. I have other 4 books published besides Play Like a Pro,
Right.
which is the Pro Play method. So they can also search for that. So I'm easy to find. You just have to
you are
Juan
Juan
Prego
Prego.
on Google.
It sounds like a Hollywood actor's name,
Thank you.
the latest movie with Juan Prego talking about Playmobil. Juan, listen, look, thank you so much for giving me your time today. It was really, really enjoyable, and we'd love to have you back on the podcast. Maybe when the book comes out, and I'm sure you'll have more insights by that stage. When the book comes out, you'll be getting a lot more feedback, even though it's been in Spanish for a couple of years already. Hopefully the book is a massive success. I'll link to all of those things you just mentioned in the show notes. People, check out Juan Prego's work. It's awesome. And obviously, if you want to check out and learn more about Playmobil Pro, we'll put a link to Playmobil Pro into the show notes as well. Juan, thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much for the invitation. And for whoever is looking or listening to this, why not start playing today?